Hello and welcome to Opwall's Field Notes, a podcast created by Operation Wallacea to share stories and insights from our 25 years working in the field. My name is Sophia Wood, Opwall's country manager for Ecuador and director of Friends of Wallacea, and I will be your host for this series. We launched this podcast to shine a light on the world of biodiversity field research and the work of those who dedicate their lives to understanding and protecting our planet. Each month, we have conversations with scientists, community conservationists, and experienced academics about new research, protecting biodiversity, and daily life out in the field. Our guest today is Katie Bell, who leads the fundraising team at Opwall as well as running our site in Borneo. She originally joined Opwall after becoming passionate about marine science and studying a bachelor's and master's degree on marine environmental science and coastal resource management, respectively. Katie is also Opwall's environmental officer, meaning she works to lower the environmental impact of our daily operations, from offsetting travel to eliminating plastic waste. We invited her on the podcast today to discuss how anyone can lower their environmental impact during the holiday season while still enjoying the festivities. We discussed tips for low-waste gift-giving and holiday meals, as well as how to address controversial topics like anthropogenic climate change with friends and family in a sensitive way. As you prepare for this holiday season, take a moment to reflect on small ways that you as an individual can make a difference for the environment. As Katie mentions in this episode, even a small change can leave a positive impact. Hi, Katie. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Hi, thank you ever so much for having me.
Since we're taping everything from home, where are you based right now?
So I currently am based in Lincoln, near to Opwall HQ in Lincolnshire in the UK. I live actually with a couple of other people from the office as well. So it's a bit of an Opwall house. It's a bit of an Opwall city, actually. There's quite a lot of us based here. So it's nice. We all work and socialise with each other and haven't got sick of each other yet. So it's quite nice, really.
That is pretty amazing. I know it's a very small city. I've been there a couple of times. Not quite as small as the village where the Opwall office is.
No. And the internet is a lot better in Lincoln City, which is also really helpful with the working from home aspect at the moment.
Helpful to our podcast too. Before we kind of dive into the topic for today, I'd love to just hear a little bit of background on you and kind of how you first became inspired and decided to become a scientist and work in conservation.
So initially, I was quite late into it, I'd say. I remember having a careers lesson at school. So we were looking at doing our UCAS applications, applying to university and doing all of that. And I basically finished mine. I was planning on going and doing a sports science degree, basically because that's what everyone in my family had done. And I liked PE. I was a competitive swimmer back then, so it just seemed like the right path to go down. And then I remember us doing like a session where she asked us to write down what we wanted to be doing in 10 years time, and I wrote down that I wanted to be on a tropical beach saving baby turtles, which is completely unrealistic, obviously, but in my head I was like, actually I could do something like that. I could make a difference when it comes to the environment and conservation and that sort of thing, which I think is ultimately what I was looking to do. So I had a mad panic and changed everything and looked into more sort of environmentally focused courses, and found a marine environmental science degree at Portsmouth University. Ended up going there and the rest was history. And it was super far away from home at the time as well, which was even better. But yeah, that's sort of how I got onto that path. It was quite a last minute change, really, and I'm glad it did happen.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, I don't want to ask if you were spending all your time on a tropical beach saving baby turtles. I know it recently snowed in Lincoln.
Yeah, it did. It's been great. It's been really, really cold. And then today's been so much nicer. It's really strange. UK weather. Never know what's going to happen.
That's true. Well, I know you're far from baby turtles now, but could you tell us just a bit more about what made you decide to work at Opwall and what your role is at Opwall today?
Yeah, so I had actually heard of Opwall when I was at university. They'd done talks at the university, and I'd sort of, before my third year, had been looking into going away and doing research. So I'd looked at going away as an undergraduate for my dissertation. I actually ended up going and joining something that was put onto my tutor. So I didn't end up going away with Opwall, but I was always aware of them. And sort of looked into similar organisations, and I liked that research was actually at the forefront of the expeditions rather than anything else. once I finished my master's at uni, I was sort of struggling to find work in conservation. So I was temping strangely, as an admin assistant at a company that they made and sold trucks, of all things, completely like opposite end of the scale. But basically, one of the salesmen that was in my office was a birder who worked with a couple of the directors at Opwall. They put me in touch, and I ended up getting an interview, and the rest was history. So quite an unconventional way into Opwall compared to a lot of other people. And I initially started off just as maternity cover as a fundraising officer. So that was the main part of my job, helping students to fundraise for the expeditions, which I still do now, and is actually probably the favourite part of my job. Obviously, the expeditions that we run are incredible, and I really rate that they should be open to everyone and shouldn't be limited, by the amount of money that you have. So the fact that we offer full fundraising support to all of those students is another thing that actually made me really passionate about working for Opwall, because a lot of the other organisations don't offer that same support. And then from there, I sort of began progressing through into international sales team. So that allowed me to work with a lot of schools around the world and help them with their fundraising as well. And then during my first season, I was lucky enough to be sent to Indonesia. I spent a week in the forest, and then the rest of the season at the marine site in Baobab, which was amazing. And then since then, I've been on and managed our project in Borneo, which was brand new in 2019. Such a shame that we haven't been able to get back out there, but hopefully in the not too distant future, we will be back. And then this past summer, I was out in Croatia managing our marine site. So it was really, really nice. I think people were quite jealous of us to be able to get out into the field after having a couple of years off. It was really good.
Wow, what a story. And I guess, it's always interesting to hear how people end up in the position that we're in, obviously Opwall, but also in other companies, because I think every time I ask that question, you find out that everyone has an unusual journey. Very few people just like apply for a job and there, which I think is, good for the people listening who are, early in their careers, interested in going into conservation, that like there's so many different ways to end up working in conservation.
Absolutely. I think there's so much pressure on knowledge and universities and skills, and actually a lot of it is networking, just getting out there and experience it and speaking to people, and it can come from really unlikely places. So yeah, definitely agree with that.
Yeah, absolutely. I wanted to ask you one more question before we get into our main topic. So one of your roles at Opwall is also as the environmental officer. Is that right? So, obviously Opwall in what we do is environmentally focused, and when we're focused outward, but your role is also to help Opwall be more environmentally friendly internally, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. It actually came about. So after I'd been working at Opwall for a little while, I actually went back to the company that I was working for before, the one that make and sell lorries, to do a talk to some of their apprentices about how they can be more environmentally conscious, basically. It was really, I went and did it. And one of the directors at Opwall heard about me doing that and was like, well, we should be doing similar things. There's always something that we can be doing. So sort of took on that role and started introducing really small things. It wasn't anything major. Everyone was doing pretty good things, as we're all quite environmentally aware already. But we were able to just introduce some small changes into the office, which really helped make a difference, especially when a lot of us are on the road so much. We sort of started introducing more reusable products, little things like straws and cutlery that then meant that we weren't having to pick them up when we were out doing our tours around the universities and little things like that. So it was really small changes, but I think it made a difference. And people were already doing things, but it was nice to be doing them as a team as well.
Awesome. Well, that explains a little bit more about why I've asked you to talk about this topic today, because obviously your work with Opwall, and I guess previously with this other company, has been to work with people on an individual level and corporate level as to how, what small changes you can make in day-to-day life, right, to have a lower impact on the environment. And today I asked you to talk about a really fun and festive topic because of this time of year. A lot of people are thinking about the holidays, and especially, with the holidays comes often a lot more waste, especially like paper waste, food waste, etc. And I've often asked myself, and I'm sure a lot of other people have asked, how, you can be more eco-friendly around the holidays and have a lower impact. So as we start out, I want to ask kind of what your favorite green holiday tradition is.
So I think for us now being in a house, and since being in Lincoln, had always, as I was growing up, we'd always had fake Christmas trees, which is great because they're reusable, and they last forever. But I'd always really, really wanted a real Christmas tree. And I got speaking to some of the other people at Opwall that also live in the area, and they told me about this place. And it's basically a nursery that allow you to pick a Christmas tree, and you have it delivered, and it's still in its big pot, and you keep it for the festive period, and you get a tray and you just fill it with water, so you keep it alive, and then it gets returned at the end of Christmas and they replant it. And it's such a small thing, but it's really lovely because it's meant we get a real Christmas tree, and then the next year we can go and have the same Christmas tree, or we go and pick another one. So this will be my second year of doing it, and I picked the same tree as I had last year. And it's just really nice, like a really simple way of just reducing that waste impact, and still having a really nice Christmas tradition as well. And it's a nice activity going and picking the tree as well, so that's an added perk from it as well.
That's awesome. I've heard of those kinds of places. I've never found one. Obviously, me here in South America do not have access to a lot of Christmas trees, but when I go back home, I hope to be able to find a place that's also doing a similar kind of thing. Because obviously, at the very least, trees are biodegradable, but it'd be better to have one that
definitely, especially around here in rural Lincolnshire at the end of Christmas, you just see them laying in lay-bys and by the side of the road. And like you say, it could be worse, but they don't need to be there at the end of the day. So any way that we can reduce that is good.
Exactly. Well, speaking of that, obviously that's a beautiful tradition. Do you have any other tips for people who want to celebrate the holidays and try to minimize their impact on the environment?
I think one of the easiest ways to really reduce waste is, and still enjoy a nice tradition of Christmas, is actually being selective about what you use to wrap your gifts with. You can really make presents look lovely and festive while still using things like brown paper with twine, so it doesn't even need sellotape. And even like newspaper as well for wrapping gifts can actually look really cool. I've seen people that have done really cool folding techniques. It's normally on like TikTok or YouTube or something, and then they can incorporate bits of like holly bush or trees in it to add a sort of even more like festive touch, which is nice. I think it's just really super simple way to minimize impact, while still allowing people to be quite creative if they want to be, and still a nice thing to do in the build up to Christmas. We actually had one of the girls at work also use reusable Hessian bags, which were really nice. And she uses them each year, or even gift bags as well are a nice thing to give people that they can then keep to use for following years as well. And it also saves you loads of money, which is really, really helpful too, an added bonus. And I think, like you touched on previously, one of the other big things with Christmas is food waste. It's already huge. And I think over Christmas, it increases by something like 10 to 20%, which is just mad. I think a real key way to just prevent this is just being organised and making a list of exactly what it is you need for your Christmas dinner or whatever it is when you've got people around or you're going places, and really try and overbuying things just for the sake of it. It's really easy to get sort of pulled into these offers that are happening in supermarkets and all over the place. And if it's not going to get eaten, there's just no point. And also there's so many ways to reuse leftovers now. Loads of recipes out there, ways to minimize the amount of food being thrown away. So I think they're the two sort of key places and super easy ways just to reduce waste at this time of year, especially.
Yeah, those are great. I'm glad you brought up the folding techniques, because I was starting to see those places, and I think that's such a cool, unique, kind of fun craft project to just sit and try to figure out this creative way of folding the paper or whatever you're wrapping it in, so that you don't even have to use a piece of plastic or a piece of ribbon or whatever else it is to close it, because it's all possible. And it's a lot more creative and fun to actually, put on it or use something around the house that you're already, that already exists.
Absolutely. And I think it adds a personal touch as well. Like if you get given a present like that, it's so much nicer rather than, obviously you can get these lovely gift wraps with glitter and bows and things on them, but then that's the thing that then impacts on the waste. And it's so much nicer to have something with a bit more of a personal touch that looks like it's taken a bit more time to produce, I think, as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you made me think about one of my favorite holiday traditions with my family, which is always to make a turkey pot pie with the leftover turkey a couple of days after Christmas. And so much of the stuff that you end up using, you can also freeze and
Yeah.
use later in the year, or use to make stock, or, even, use to make a meal for somebody in need. Don't, give to a family that you know. So there's a lot of stuff that you can do. One thing that you mentioned, I know, part of this conversation is inspired by an article you wrote for our blog a few years ago, which will be on the newsletter and linked in the show notes here, about having a greener Christmas. And one of the things you also suggested as a kind of lower impact Christmas gift or holiday gift would be giving people experiences. What kind of experiences could people consider giving as a gift this year?
There's so many really great things that people can do. And I actually think an experience is a much more thoughtful gift idea. It's something I always really appreciate from people. There's so many simple things like restaurant vouchers or even cinema tickets, memberships to different places like galleries or museums. Concert tickets are brilliant as well, especially if you've got a local venue. It doesn't even have to be a big band or singer or anyone that's coming along. Just the experience in itself, offering to take someone to a concert and for a couple of drinks beforehand or for dinner, is just a really cool thing to do. Also, you can even come up with your own idea. We had a really good we basically do Secret Santa within Opwall HQ each year, and one year someone made their Secret Santa an at-home escape room. And they set it all up for them, invited a load of people round to complete this escape room. And it was just really cool, and it was really unique. And it was something that the person that received it they were notoriously very good at giving gifts. So I think there was a lot of pressure on what to get them. They wanted something unique and special like that, which was cool. And I think you can literally download kits for these sorts of things online. And it doesn't really require a huge amount of effort at all, but still really unique and thoughtful. So stuff like that, I think, goes down really well.
Yeah, I love that. And I love to get and give experiences. I feel like, with most things, you'll eventually outgrow them. They will break, you lose them, whatever it is. But with experiences and sharing things with people you really care about, you never forget, and you get a lot more out of it. And I think, of course, especially this year with, we've been in and out of lockdown for a long time, people have been separated from loved ones. It might be all the more special to get to spend some quality time with people you care about that you might not have seen for a long time. And I was going to say, like, there's even virtual experiences now, right, that you can do at a distance, that cooking classes and stuff like that I think are really fun.
Absolutely. And even if they're not available, there's something you can create really easily. It's something, especially within doing the fundraising stuff at Opwall, I've noticed people coming up with really ingenious ways of raising money, but it doesn't even have to be a way to raise money anymore. It can just be a nice thing to do a cocktail making session with your friends online or something, or, cheese and wine night, or I realize a lot of them seem to be revolving around alcohol, but, there's loads of things that you can do online or virtually, like you say, that are great. So yeah, definitely agree with that.
I was going to say, last year I gifted someone a pasta making class online, and we did it with, like, in this Italian villa, and it was so cool because it was, never learned that skill at home. Otherwise, we were in our own kitchen, all the ingredients from the local grocery store, all together probably cost £20.
Yeah.
And it was really unique to get to spend the whole afternoon together, and then obviously get to eat the meal.
Definitely. I love that idea.
Yeah, that was really fun. All right. Well, I know obviously it's really fun to think about things that we can gift people, but also I know that the holidays for lots of people can be really stressful, especially thinking about what you're going to give to people, spending money, spending a lot of time around family. And it can feel like there's just a lot of effort that goes into the holidays already. And so, to be able to then think on top of that, how to give gifts creatively or celebrate the holidays in a creative way that has a lower impact on the environment. So I wanted to ask you, do individual actions really make a difference in decreasing waste around the holidays? Like, is it worth the effort, I guess, for people to think about these things on top of everything else that's already going on?
I think they really do. And I think it's very common, especially in young people now, to feel really incredibly overwhelmed by everything that is happening in the world at the moment, especially when it comes to climate change and declines in biodiversity around the world. So you almost get pulled into sort of a sense of, well, what's the point? What difference can I make? Well, I think I've had it before. It happens to everyone. But really, the smallest changes can add up. And the more people that do it and the more people that make these small changes, it really equates into such a bigger thing. People might not be doing it this year, but if they see you doing it, that might inspire them for next year to use less wrapping paper and come up with some different ways of wrapping gifts, or to gift that experience rather than a physical object that they're, like you said, they're going to lose interest in. So it all has a knock-on effect, I think, ultimately, and really is important just to make those small changes. If that's all you can do for now, that's better than you were doing before. So that's all we can ever ask, I think, of ourselves.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And I am a huge believer in small incremental change. Also, you never know when you might start a brand new holiday tradition by doing one of these things that actually creates a happy memory for you and your family or friends that are a part of it. So speaking of small and incremental change, as I said, I really believe in the power of kind of making tiny changes in our daily lives to minimize environmental impact. But sometimes it can feel really overwhelming, as you said, and that we can never do enough. But I think even one tiny thing makes a difference, and those can add up over time. So obviously, beyond this holiday, we're coming up on the new year. What is one small change that you've committed to making for next year, or even starting this year?
Yeah, so I think, like you say, it is those small changes that make a difference. And one of the big things I've noticed since moving out and living in my own home has been how much waste is produced through little things like cleaning bottles and that sort of thing. So I've been really trying hard to find alternative solutions, and it's something that we had already started doing in the Opwall office as part of sort of my environmental officer role. So little things like package-free laundry pods, refillable bottles, all of those sorts of things. And there really are so many options out there now, especially, and it really makes such a difference. I've noticed such a difference with how much I'm throwing away. And I think there's a real misconception with it that it's a more expensive way to do things. I've actually found that sort of there is an initial upfront higher price potentially, but then the actual bottles last, and you end up saving yourself loads of money because the refillable options are often cheaper than buying a whole new bottle of something. So it actually works out really well. And they also often contain ingredients that are much less harmful to the environment, which is an added bonus there. So that's sort of something that I'm still committing to doing. And there's still things that I use that I don't want to use, and I want to try and find alternatives for those. So that's sort of something I'm trying to work on now.
That's awesome. Well, that's perfect. And, I completely agree. Similarly, I feel like especially every Opwall season pushes me to be a little bit better and learn a way to be better about those things. And I remember, when I first cut all the plastic out of my shower products or hygiene products, that felt really, really challenging to look for options. But now it's just part of my routine, and I can look at other things that I can do. And so, and it seems really small at the time, but each one ends up adding up. So I do have another question that's maybe a little bit trickier, because obviously, part of the stress of the holidays can sometimes be like the tension of being around friends or family that disagree about things like politics, social beliefs, how to celebrate traditions as times are changing, etc. I think a lot of people end up having hard conversations with family or avoiding hard conversations with family over the holidays as they're all together. Do you have any suggestions for how people can effectively and sensitively address issues like climate change and human impact on the environment with their friends and family this holiday season?
Yeah, I think I completely understand people's anxiety, especially if they've sort of got their own lives and going back to family and friends, if you don't have similar opinions. But I think it is also really important to have these discussions with family and friends, but understand that it's often the last thing that people really want to deal with, especially around Christmas. So no one really wants to have confrontation, especially at that time of year, and that's completely understandable. I think something I've learned is it's really important to just hear people out, even if you disagree with what it is that they're saying and their opinion. Just allowing them the time to voice what they think before offering any alternatives can really help to make it a more productive conversation, I think, rather than turn it into, a shouting match across the dinner table with each other. Even something really simple like just bringing up an article that you've read or a news report about climate change or the environment in some way can just get the ball rolling to open that discussion in like a less aggressive way, really, and make it more of an open discussion. People have opinions and they're welcome, that they're open to have them, that's part of life, but we can still try and instill a little bit more knowledge into them in a subtle way. And I think that's something, is just making sure that people know that they're being listened to first is a really key thing with that.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. Kind of do it out of love and do it, knowing that it might not get the response that you're hoping for, but also knowing obviously that, the close conversations between friends and family are often what do actually eventually change people's behavior. Also modeling that behavior can help, if you are a vegetarian, like making a delicious meat-free meal as a part of the holidays is a way to include everybody in it rather than making people feel excluded.
Absolutely. It's not something that we want to be, you don't want to be forcing it down people's throats at all. You want to, like you say, subtly be including those things and just making them aware of what you're doing and what they could also be doing. It's quite a nice way of doing it, for sure.
Awesome. Well, to end, obviously this has been a pretty positive podcast. We're talking about the holidays, something that people are happy to talk about. But obviously it still can be a difficult and sensitive subject. But so to end us out on a positive note today, I wanted to ask you why you personally believe we should keep fighting to protect biodiversity and prevent climate change, and really what gets you out of bed in the morning.
I think having sort of firsthand seen the impacts of climate change, both, on Opwall expeditions around the world and also here at home, I'd hate to know that future generations won't have those same experiences that I've had. One of my actual favourite parts of working for Opwall and sort of in conservation is giving young people and students the opportunity to see some incredible, amazing things all over the world and contribute to sort of protecting those habitats. It's not even just the opportunity to see, amazing wildlife, but we often get students who arrive on site who are really shy and introverted, and after just a few days completely come out of their shells after, getting involved in surveys with scientists and local staff members. And I'd hate to think that we wouldn't be able to continue to provide these experiences in years to come. So that's something that I'm quite passionate about and why I really enjoy my job.
Oh, I love that. That's a great way to end. And I hope we can keep doing the same and giving people the opportunity to see the world and enjoy it for a long time and through this holiday season too. I hope we can have you back on the podcast in the future to talk more about Indonesia and Borneo. It was fantastic to talk to you today about the holiday season and what you can do to make the holidays just a little bit greener. Thanks so much for your time, Katie.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for tuning in to Opwall's Field Notes. We hope you enjoyed this festive episode about making the holidays just a little greener with Katie, and that you'll be inspired to make small changes in your own home. From everyone here at Opwall, we wish you a very happy holiday and look forward to seeing you in the new year. Please do be sure to subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts to stay up to date on new episodes about conservation and biodiversity hotspots around the world, coming soon on Opwall's Field Notes.